See your face.
Oh, do you? I don't see your face.
I see yours.
Oh, I wonder why I can't see your face.
Okay, well, I see yours. I don't see everybody else. Let me go back.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so is anybody else on? Huh. This is so weird.
Okay.
You want, Mr. Costa, you want, you'll have to be off the hearing. Okay, so it should transfer over here.
Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you, Donzella.
I see Sean, but he's the only person I see or hear. I tell you what, I'm gonna hang up and then go back
Good
on.
evening, Mr. Peoples.
Good
Oh,
evening.
there it is. Okay, there we go.
Thanks for the patience. We're figuring out just a couple logistics here last minute. If you will bear with us a couple of moments.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me?
Donzella, are you on?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
I can, yes. So Kemp is a little tied up and is going to be joining us a bit later. Are you comfortable and/or able to run the meeting for us in his absence?
Yes.
Awesome. Do you have at your disposal a copy of the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. We can give you a couple of minutes to get situated, or I see Kemp is joining us as well too.
Okay, then let him go ahead and take over.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
All right, have we done roll call?
No, we were just getting started, so you go ahead.
My apologies, everyone, for not being present in the room. All right, Anaskevich,
Here.
Gippin,
Here.
Peoples,
Here.
Hawkins,
Here.
Castle,
Here.
Costa,
Present.
Richards,
Here.
and Jones.
Here.
Great to hear from everybody this evening. Can I get a motion to approve last meeting's minutes?
So move.
I'm
Can I get a second?
Second.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed like sign? All right. We'll move forward. This is our special meeting. And this meeting, we're discussing the budget, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Mr. Casa, I turn it over to you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you for everyone who's able to be here both physically and via Zoom this evening, as well as everyone's attention and participation with respect to the budget. I want to, I guess, just as you all know, it's a special meeting this evening, so really the agenda is going to be limited to discussion of our fiscal year 2025 budget. And I think kind of 3 or 4 main things that really need to happen there. Particular, just a little bit of background and context with respect to the budget process overall. I turn over and give our auditor, Mr. Fennell, an opportunity to discuss the budget. You all should have received a copy of the budget sent out, the updated budget sent out last week, and then again with some reflecting comments, questions, and concerns via a document and a summary that was sent out this past Monday, January 27th. After that, an opportunity for board members to discuss and consider the budget itself. And if there is an appetite to take a vote on it, then we will do so then. So a bit of background and context, as you all probably know, the Charter Amendment, Section 2, subsection E, discusses and addresses the budget for the board. It requires that the board on an annual basis to both approve a budget, and it also sets out minimal thresholds for the city of Akron to fund the board's budget respectively. And so when this board was sat in March of 2023, we were provided a preliminary supplemental budget, which in essence laid out, it covered the salary for the positions that are laid and outlined under the charter, as well as some costs that are ancillary to those as well too. At the beginning or the ending of 2020, at the beginning of fiscal year 2024, Board Chair Kemp and myself went through the budget, the preliminary budget that we initially received, and then modified it for this year. And what's important to note was that this year's budget did not fully capture or track along with the cost for our staff and our employees accurately. And so the budget process itself has really been, I think, a work in progress as we've got the department, the Office of Independent Police Auditor, fully staffed up. And so what you have before you is now a budget that's been prepared, vetted, discussed, and revised several times by our auditor, and what I'd like to consider the first budget that we actually have that fully recognizes the needs, the desires, and the tools that we as a department, as well as a board, believe that are going to best support the office, the OIPA moving forward, and the CPOB going into this year. And so I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Fennell, asking that you walk the board through the budget, but also the 2024 summary document that you sent out to the board as well too, and making a note of the most significant additions to the budget, as well as also giving the board a sense of what your priority may be with respect to some of these additional items that we're seeing for the 2025 fiscal year budget.
Thank you. Just kind of a recap of 2024. Initially, like I said, I identified some priorities that the office needed, and the first priority was hiring our deputy independent police auditor. But then there were other priorities that I identified that would require a substantial initial expenditure: developing a case management system and database, and then identifying other IT needs, such as being able to review the volume of body-worn camera footage that we have to review with each case with the aid of AI. And those two needs add considerably to the budget for the upfront cost for the fiscal year 2025. So just to give you an idea, when I first started, we had approximately 220 cases that were already in the queue, so to speak, for review. Right now, we have in excess of 350 uses of force that will need to be taken from paper form, whether it's PDF or Word document, and the data transferred to a database of some sort so that we can do additional analysis for patterns and trends, and look where there may be issues within policy and training, so that we can make recommendations and work in that direction. So, excuse me. In order to do that process and do the data analysis, and also capture and pull that data out of the various Word and PDF documents, I've put in a request, or I've added to this budget some positions, one being data analyst. And if you notice, I want to start with a data analyst at part-time status. And then I also originally had a request for another police auditor, but I removed that because I want to see what the outcome will be from the proposed use of force review and what those recommendations will be, and what comes out of that review and what will be needed. So I think for right now, having a data analyst at part-time and foregoing the additional police auditor, we will be able to maintain our effectiveness as an office. And then once we get the review done and see what the recommendations are and get a game plan on how to implement and process and track those recommendations, then next year we may need to move the data analyst up to a full-time position and also bring in at least another police auditor. So originally, I think when we talked, Mr. Costa, those were 2 full-time positions. But after thinking about what's coming down the pike, I'd rather have a better idea of what we need next year than trying to get those now. Now, having said that, obviously, if the board thinks differently, we can adjust our request and then add those 2 in. But the documents before you today, I've taken those 2 out, or made those adjustments, I should say.
I appreciate the consideration to the ongoing use of force process, especially with reflecting in the budget. For my own curiosity, how does the size of OIPA currently, for a city this size, compare to the staffing of other offices of, relatively similar sizes of the city of Akron, if that makes sense?
Well, usually you would want to have, say, 1 auditor or 1 investigator for, say, every 100 to 150 officers. So if we work with that, then we would need at least 3 auditors or investigators, whatever you want to call them. We'd call them police auditors. Now, we're only looking at uses of force incidents, so we're not conducting investigations. So I think because we're not conducting investigations, we could actually work with 1 and maybe 2, depending on if uses of force increase or how that comes about. We also have to think about when a shooting, officer-involved shooting occurs, that type of review is going to be very time-consuming, and it may require, the way I'm looking at it, it may require to contract with specialists just for that project. So if we, like right now, it's just myself and our deputy auditor. So we have Jalen Walker shooting that's getting prepared for review. So I'm looking to see, and I do have funds listed in this budget request for that we may need to contract with someone specifically to assist with that review so that we can maintain the work of the day-to-day uses of force reviews, because in a police shooting such as Jalen Walker, there's mountains of video that'll need to be looked at. There were multiple officers involved. So 1 person trying to do that is going to be all time consuming. And basically, you'd want another set of eyes working with you on a project such as that. So, but to answer your question, I think because of the nature of what we're doing, and we're not an investigative body as such, that we can get away with having just 1 police auditor, additional police auditor.
Thank you.
Okay. And so, like I said, with the data analyst, and then also with the criminal justice intern, which, by the way, we have selected an intern. She's now going through the process through HR to get all the paperwork and everything together. So we will be bringing on one intern to assist in taking that information from its paper form and at the present moment, putting it into an Excel spreadsheet with the plan that once we get our case management and database system, they can merge the information from the Excel spreadsheet into the system, and then the intern then can continue to put the pending, not the pending, but the completed reviews and that completed information into the database. So we had several applicants, and we were able to narrow it down to one, which we interviewed. She did very well, and she's accepted the position.
Does this budget reflect any potential event that the criminal justice interns, work demands or hours may, that need may increase beyond what we're budgeting for?
Yes, there is a request for an additional intern in addition to the one that we have.
Okay.
Yeah, but we would and the hours, we anticipate the intern only working 20 hours or less a week, but we budgeted for 25 to take into account special projects or other needs that may arise within the office. But we want to keep it no more than 25 hours a week so that it stays as a part-time position.
Okay. Thank you.
And that,
Mr.
just a
Fournette.
question. Quick question. So that's reflected in line item 61030, is that wages part-time? I'm looking on the sheet here, 27,000.
Yes, well, it's reflected in the part-time, and it's also that line 6,100 to 6130 wages part-time also reflects the money that you as a board members receive for your meetings. And then it's rounded up to 40,000 to also take into account special meetings or special events or projects that come about so that there's sufficient funding to cover for your attendance at those things.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Fennell?
Yes, ma'am.
How long are you anticipating the part-time position of intern to last? A year, 6 months, or?
Well, I anticipate with this particular intern at least 6 months before she would leave for college. And again, at that point, we will develop projects and see what our needs are, but develop a project to continue the program and bring in additional seniors for next year, for next school year.
Okay, thank you.
Are we going to have a list of potential seniors that we're going to be looking at after each one goes off to college? So if one is being used right now, within a certain period of time of them leaving, are we going to have someone else ready to slide into that spot?
If I understand you correctly, we won't have like a list that we could go to HR and just draw from. We will have to, one of the things I want to do is reevaluate the process that we use to attract students from Akron Public Schools. We made a concerted effort. The results were not what I wanted, so we're going to have to work and coordinate again with the schools to see how we can make sure that the students understand what it is we're asking, what this opportunity means to them. And we're looking at seniors, so we would have to focus on the 11th graders that would be in the program next year that we targeted. So we won't really be able to begin to do that until the start of the school year, and we identify which students are in the program before we can go present to the classes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I had one more question.
Yes.
For the second auditor, I think you already answered this question, Mr. Fennell, but is the need for a second auditor primarily because of the ratio between auditor versus how many officers are on the Akron Police Force?
No, that's not what the need would be. It initially, well, let me back up. Initially, I thought that would be sufficient to base it on that. But then after thinking and really considering this review process that the city wishes to engage in, I want to see what the recommendations are and the tasks that come out of that review before we move in that direction. Because it may be that some changes are made that may have a significant impact on the use of force incidents that we have to review. And that impact may lessen that amount or it may increase it, I don't know. So we need to, I want to see what those changes are before we bring in another body.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman? One question, then.
Go ahead, Bob.
A couple of comments. Were the personnel, do these positions assume essentially full year, or is there some anticipated schedule of bringing these folks on that's reflected in the amounts that have been requested?
It anticipates full year.
Full year, so it isn't going to be full year, I assume.
Well, no, because we're already into the year.
Exactly. So it hasn't been adjusted for some projected schedule we might
Correct.
present to council. You might want to consider that at the time this is presented.
So we had discussed and considered that and thought of some type of factor to place in there. The difficulty, I think, was in hindsight, looking at the past couple of years, we projected these hire periods, thinking we'll have someone hired on in X amount of months, and have had just a really hard time capturing that. And so I think the thought was to project for the entire year, knowing that the hiring process will not take as long as it has in the past, but also using the full year budget out as a way to inform the budget in years subsequent to.
Well, again, just a suggestion. I'm not saying I'm going to vote against this, for any reason, but including that one. But I think it would be better, for us to be able to give realistically, we need this amount of money. This is what it would be full year. This is our projected schedule, so that we are not, we're not looking for fat. We're looking for no more than we need.
Right.
And I think we need to be careful about that. Related to that, I think the same thing probably, I wish it weren't so, but probably applies to the legal counsel amount that's requested. I don't know where we are with the contracting process with that, but again, that may unfortunately not be a full year.
I based that off of just 300 hours.
Well, how did we get 300 hours? That was a question I had.
Well, I just came with 300 hours as a number that we could work with, thinking that, okay, 100 hours is roughly 2.5 weeks, which...
Well, you might want to again think about, maybe it's 300 hours a year, I don't know, but again, might want to think about presenting that with a little more detail as to what's really expected. And the $3.15 an hour, how is that arrived at? Was that with the law department? Or?
No, that was based on consulting with folks some firms that do this type of work among Mr. Fennell's, some of his national contacts.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of an average where it was, I had 300 to like 475, and I think, for us, trying to find someone at between 315, and we can adjust the hours, but
Well, knowing Akron, you might want to work with Ms. Matz and her folks about that, and perhaps refine it. Akron is not a particularly high-rate legal market.
I think that assumes that we can find counsel locally to provide the expertise that
Right.
we need.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, which I don't know if there's we'll have to see once the RFP process closes out, but, to the extent that we actually find folks that have the experience and the background providing this degree of police oversight work and doing that specific type of work, and whether or not we actually find that or whether or not we'll have to look beyond, I think that's something that we need to be
All right.
considering.
I understand. You might want to look at the hours, though. Whatever the rate is, the rate. I think some consultation with the law department about that might be useful. Those were the questions I have. I'm glad it was, that it's reduced from the initial amount, just if only for the symbolism of being under $1 million rather than over $1 million. But related to that, though, I need to make a comment about process. Oh, I'm sorry. One other point. I just checked it in the charter. I believe we have to actually, the board has to approve hires. As I read this, I think 2/3 vote of the board for personnel of the OIPA. So, as to the intern, that's something you may need to bring to us. I assume it could be done retroactively, but I think that's a board decision about staff hiring under the charter. As far as the process on the budget, I first heard that as it was presented, we were going to be requesting over $1 million at the Ed Davis Forum. And it was presented, by Councilman Garrett, in the open meeting. And in some respects, a very positive thing for us because he was very laudatory, of the board and of you and the work of your office. But he had a document of some sort. I mean, I didn't see it in detail, and he was quite clearly noting that we were going to ask council for $1 million, and was strongly advocating for it and making an argument for it. That is literally the first I heard about what our budget request was going to be. And of course, I didn't react or didn't say anything. And Ms. Bernie Hawkins was there too, and I assume you hadn't heard anything either. That shouldn't have happened. And I don't think it's of any consequence in the sense. I mean, we now have the proposal before us, questioning, and so on, and we'll vote. But I would hope in the future that would never happen. It should not have happened. So just to be noted.
Okay, well noted and well taken, and I'm not exactly positive the details that transpired and led to the understanding of where that came from, but your sentiments are.
I don't know what the conversation was that led the councilman to have whatever document he was holding and saying what he was saying. But as I say, he knew it, and I never. It's the first I'd heard of it. So that shouldn't have been.
Mr. Giffen, are you saying it was at the community event last week?
No, the one before.
Oh, okay, on the 9th.
You weren't there. Ms. Bernie Hawkins and I were there. The one at the Ed Davis Center.
Yeah, the one on the 9th of January?
It sounds right.
Yes.
Okay.
It was the one on the 9th.
Yeah, I agree, Mr. Giffen, with that sentiment. I don't know how that happened, but that shouldn't have happened for sure.
Well, somebody gave it to him.
I'm just raising it. I don't want to.
I gave it to him.
I don't want to get into the detail.
I gave it to him. I discussed what our needs were as a direct request from the councilman. I've had some council members give me a direct request, and I've shared with them what our needs are.
Okay.
Well, I think you know, and Mr. Fennell, I think if that happens, if you could just make us aware, you know, I think that would be good. That way we just have a heads up. So that way we're not walking in to a situation where we might be getting asked a question that we may be unaware of. I don't want that to happen to any of us, that we don't have that understanding. I understand the sentiment of he asked for it, and, you know, we do answer to city council, and I understand your reasoning, but man, if you could just let us know, man, that would be awesome next time. So that way we're aware the conversation and what's going on. So as Mr. Gibson's saying, none of us are caught off guard by it.
Understood.
And I certainly appreciate Mr. Fennell's responsiveness to city council members. This is the first year that we've actually had a sitting auditor, and I'm not sure what the process looked like for the prior OIPA office. I anticipate that there was not much involvement with respect to the crafting of that budget. So, but I will certainly take ownership with respect to the process and the things that could have gone better here, because Mr. Fennell was not provided much direction with respect to the preparation of the budget, and the process could have been far more seamless. And so the points are noted and well taken, and I appreciate everyone's concerns.
I have one more question, I guess, comment question. Mr. Gippen, you said something about the charter saying that we would have to approve this intern, a 6-month part-time intern, and that's my comment or question. And I'm wondering if that's necessary, given that it's a 6-month part-time appointment, and given that it goes under the office of the independent police officer, emphasis on the word independent. He's in charge of his own staff, and he can approve or disapprove his own staff. So I'm wondering, how does the board, how does the board come into play with that, given that it is a part-time position and it is for only 6 months? Do we really, I guess I'm asking, is it really necessary that the board approves his choice for an intern?
The charter so requires, ma'am. I'll read it.
Okay.
The personnel of the OIPA, which is the Office of the Independent Police Auditor, shall be appointed by a 2/3 vote of the board. That I do not read any exception. The intern is a personnel person of the board of the OIPA. The charter is quite clear. We approve it, and actually reading further, I think it is for us to take any action for, or at least we have the power of termination. So it is not, he supervises his staff, but as the charter's phrased, I don't see any other way to read it but that we must approve the employment of any personnel, and that would include a part-time intern in my judgment.
Okay, then how soon do we need to do that?
Yes, it needs to be brought to us, and I think we can probably do it retroactively. Ms. Matson, her staff would have to advise on it. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying I think that the charter process wasn't followed.
I'll bring it to the next board meeting.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fennell.
Mr. Costa, I have a question for you.
Go for it.
I'm seeing what we budgeted for 2024. It was 414 and some change. What was the actuals for 2024?
Can I come back to that?
Yes.
I don't have that number directly at my disposal. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
As of 8/14 of 2024, that's the last printout that we have. The total expenditures were $152,446.66. and had a remaining balance of $262,056. Now, yeah, that can kind of give you an idea. We did have large expenditure for training, and then, of course, the remaining salaries for the through the end of the year. But as of August 14th, we had roughly spent about a third, maybe a little more than a third of the budget.
Okay. And so we're talking about how much of a jump from what I can see. We're looking at what, close to $500,000 jump from last year's budget to this year's budget. Is that what I'm saying?
That is correct.
So as of 12/15, 2024, the total expenditure was just below 300,000, with the remaining budget amount being 130,000. Now, I think what's important to note is that under the 2024 budget, we didn't hire in Mr. Fennell until almost April, with our deputy auditor not coming on until, I believe that would have been August. So
Okay.
there was a substantial amount of the labor category that wasn't spent down due to the absence of those positions.
Okay. So what so this is a budget that's drawn up for the first time. Like, we've done a budget in the past, but I guess what I'm asking, this is the budget that we've drawn up for the first time with a fully functioning staff, right? So my question is, and this is probably a lot to ask. So how much of our budget, if you will, is if it's just Mr. Fennell, the deputy auditor, and admin, outside of all the other stuff that Mr. Fennell has asked for? What is that budget? Do we know that?
For those three roles
Yes.
would be 180, almost 182,000.
Well, I'm saying with all the other stuff, not. I mean,
with all the other stuff.
yeah,
added.
not the stuff that you're wanting to add on, because I'm just thinking, like, I would want to know for a fully functioning, and this is the first time we've had it from calendar year from January to December, because it seems like every other year we've always came in under, just because of how the hiring took place. If that makes sense, am I making sense?
So understood. If I may, I'd like to direct you to the, just make sure that we're looking at the same draft budget, which was circulated on Monday, the updated and adjusted budget.
Yeah, the 27th.
Yep. So there is, if you look at line item 6100 labor, there's that reflects the labor, which is 287. Which would account for purely the labor cost, in addition to, just purely the labor cost of what would be our full-time employees, Mr. Fennell, as well as our deputy auditor, in addition to our executive assistant that would be coming on, our data analyst, our criminal justice intern, and Ms. Thompson in her existing position, but elevated.
If I could, are you referring to this document that CC 180-100 Citizens Police Oversight Board that looks like a finance department document?
Yes.
Okay. So looking at that, I kind of wondered what it meant, and I think maybe I did get it right. But so the bottom line for 2025 on this document is something just over $500,000. Would that $500,000 in effect be answering the chairman's question that if we simply had a continuation budget with none of the additions that Mr. Fennell has proposed that it would be essentially 500,000?
Yes.
Okay.
And yes, that was correct. And the document being referenced for context, that is, just like Mr. Gippens said, that is almost a status quo budget.
Got it. So something under asking for twice what our projected budget for 2025 would otherwise be, with the rationale that's been offered.
Correct.
Okay.
With those additional staff members, it'd be 327,690.
Okay, thank you. That's the clarity I wanted. Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Well, I think I'm still confused. So what is this? So, you know, this document, bottom line is $965,870.60. What is that?
So this item here is what Mr. Fennell has been walking us through, the proposed budget that's before us. The item here is an item that I circulated earlier today that was provided by Finance, which would, in essence, be the city's internal draft budget for what they anticipated costs would be based on a continuation of this past year's budget.
So we're going to be voting on the figures here?
Yes,
Okay,
and my apology for any confusion.
that's okay.
And you sent that out in an email, correct, Mr. Costa?
Yes, correct.
So I want to make sure I'm understanding this here. So we're voting on hold on. So we're voted on the 5,
No.
or we're voting on the 9?
The
Yes,
The
9.
9. The 965.
965,870.
Okay, thank you. That's what I wanted to know.
Can I ask what the education line is for, the 40,000 to the 60,000? And did we spend 40,000 this past year on that? And exactly what does that entail?
The education line is the training. And so in bringing on the data analysts, I just anticipate a certain amount of training that for specific to oversight type of work that they would need. Plus, I still have continuing training for our deputy, and then also for board members, particularly any new board members that come on. So that number represents that type of training.
Would it also include like the oversight conference that we went to? Would that be a different item? Or would
That would be included in that.
Okay,
And those expenses related to that.
okay.
Outside of the travel expenses,
Yes.
there is a line item for
Yes,
travel.
I see that. Thanks.
And the information technology services would be the new software that we would hope to get?
Which
It's
line
under
are you?
8,806.20.
Yes. That represents the initial cost of setup. Now, I would hopefully be able to negotiate lower, but my understanding is, when I've talked with some firms that know what we need, that to set it up, get it established, it's around $60,000. And that includes the license, that includes the cloud storage, and the access for, several people within the office, which we would fall within that number, so we wouldn't have to get more access. Now, after the initial setup, that number should go down considerably.
Do we have any idea if this is a reasonable request for city council? If that would be even considered?
I mean, I think there's an argument as to what's reasonable. We don't have in front of us the actual City of Akron police budget. And I think given the heightened amount of use of force, deadly force concerns and events that we've seen over the past couple of years, I think there's a true argument that if this board is to really be effective, then it needs additional tools and resources so it can do the work that the charter set it out to be. So, you know, I think that's going to be an individual vote by council members. But, you know, if we look at the massive settlements that have been paid out to individual families who have been, you know, victims of you know, deadly force, use of force accidents, and if we look at the, you know, amount that the city is consistently paying for these, you know, APD conduct, you know, to the extent that this board's able to save the city money because we have better tools that we can identify, you know, patterns, practices, and behaviors, I think that there's an amazing argument to say that the return on investment for us passing a budget is actually a huge win and a benefit for the city. So that's been my perspective along this budget process, and I welcome any other board members' thoughts or perspectives too.
Well,
I have something. I want to comment on that. I totally agree with what Brandon is saying. I wholeheartedly agree with what he's saying. But again, and I've mentioned this before in past meetings, my concern is, and my worry in getting a budget this massive passed is that, yes, we need those tools. And yes, those tools will be very beneficial for us to identify patterns and practices. However, the charter is still our problem because the charter still limits our ability to do anything beyond beyond making a recommendation. And my fear is that a budget this size, it's in conflict with what we're able to, what powers we even have to do anything. It's in conflict with that, a budget that size. You know, I'm all for it. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying, unless we get more power with amending that charter where we can get more power as a board to justify spending that kind of money, I'm worried that it's going to be that is going to be a problem with city council.
I would not vote for this if I thought it was an unreasonable request. And I'm satisfied that it's reasonable. It might, you know, is it on the high side of reasonable? Probably. But to answer Ms. Richards' question, I mean, to the extent I've had, you know, not extensive conversations, I don't think we're just going to be kicked to the moon by council on this. I think that what I'm picking up is that I think there's an openness to this. I think it, you know, anybody who thinks this is going to be an easy sell is deluding themselves. You know, there's every good reason for council to be questioning and nearly double our current budget. But I think the rationale that's been developed is a good one. I think it's not looking to more powers. I think that this reflects what's needed to do the job with our limited powers adequately, which of course we have an enormous amount of review that needs to happen, not least Jalen Walker, and then these other cases that are now in the queue. You know, so will we get all this? I don't think there's any way to know. I mean, if you look at the names of at the last meeting, we kind of were looking at the names of who's on the budget committee. You know, I think we can expect some really hard questions, and that's appropriate for them. And if we can't answer them adequately, we shouldn't get what we're asking for. But I have enough confidence that we can get this budget or something like it approved by council. I think overall, you know, particularly you know, this year now that Mr. Fennell's been on, and then with Ms. Myers and, you know, Ms. Thompson's been with us all this time keeping the ship afloat. I think we've got good community credibility. At the two forums, I think that was apparent. And I think that, you know, the willingness of at least a majority of council to approve this, I think we've got a good shot at it. And we should take the shot. We shouldn't just assume this can't go through, don't do it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree too. I think you have not because you ask not. So we put it before the board and our council, And I agree with the rationale. You know, even a year ago, we were in a different position in terms of yet another, two more police shootings, use of force, and deadly shootings. And so, you know, the issue only becomes more critical, which speaks to the necessity for this body and the officer of the police auditor's office. And so I agree with that. I agree with that. And if, you know, it doesn't pass, it doesn't pass, you know, because we whittle it down from there. And it's almost probably going to be sort of like a negotiation, but I agree that we should go forward with it.
I think that this is a budget that's been responsive to the requests and the needs of the community. In responding to Mrs. Aniskevich, while the board is limited in terms of what it's able to do, the heightened increase of this budget reflects the addition of case management tools, as well as data infrastructure that is going to enable Mr. Fennell and his team to bring forth recommendations to City Council that have the full attention and I think consideration that the department is able to actually place behind recommendations. And it's also going to free up Mr. Fennell's capacity and the team's capacity through having the added tools in order to spend that time in crafting recommendations. And so, you know, I think that this budget says that we've struggled with the limited authority that we do have, and that we are doing our best to maximize the lanes that we can move forward to make recommendations. And now we're asking for something, you know? And I think that we have a duty to be responsive to the citizens of the city and to find ways that we can bring forth meaningful, you know, potential changes with the tools that are available to us. And so we need the tools. And so we need the money.
Yes, I agree with that. Don't misunderstand me, you all. I am not saying that we shouldn't move forward with the budget. I'm not saying that the tools that we need aren't necessary. What I am saying is, in moving forward with this budget, and hopefully it'll be approved, that I hope that our next step is to also move forward with looking at trying to amend our charter somehow, so that when we get all these tools, hopefully if the budget passes and we get all these investigative tools that we need, that we can use them to the best of their ability in tandem with having a little bit more power as a board. That's all I'm saying.
Understood. That makes sense. That makes sense. Thanks.
So when is the last possible time that we need to submit our budget?
So finance would have liked the budget before the end of the month, but they said until the end of the first week of February at the latest. Mr. Ingram or Ms. Matz, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know if hearing dates have been scheduled for the city just yet. Okay, so mid-February, but I think in terms of, so we can bring forward to finance and the folks to consider, you know, the end of February. I mean, sorry, the end of the first week of February is probably our hard deadline.
And with the technology that we need, Mr. Fennell, that is in the budget, I think that shows, if I'm looking at it, when we talk about the equipment, is it under that line item that is increased by, I think, 14? Or is it under supplies that is increasing by 23,000? For the database you're asking for, or we need.
Which line item are you referring to? Which line item are you referring to?
I'm referring to, I know the database that you've been talking about that you would like to have.
Yes, that's under 80,000 to 80,620.
Yeah.
And is this the only database comparison that we had, or are there other ones that we can compare it to?
We have not submitted an RFP yet. I have prepared an RFP draft. so that we can start that process. But I for each one, and it's two-part system, each one should not be more than $60,000.
Okay.
To $60,000 for the setup and the initial licenses for the year and the cloud storage for the year.
And then there's a reoccurring annual fee.
Yes, that.
So the 60,000 is just the one-time fee. Then there's an annual fee, I'm sure.
Yes, and that would be part of the RFP process. That would have to negotiate that, but it should be substantially lower based on our office size.
Okay. Thank you.
So just kind of along those same lines, as I'm comparing to the original proposal to this new one, so some of these, just thinking of sustainability, are going to be reoccurring. So if we add the new staff, we know that those will be continuous, and those are, if we develop into part-time and whatnot. But some of these, looking through here, like the computer accessories, the increase, even though it's only by 6,000, that could be a one-time charge as we're building this out, correct? So some of these are the one-time charges, just like going back to that information technology services, that first one is a large number just to get it up and running, and then we would potentially have a lower cost moving forward, just thinking big picture. So this is kind of a systemic overhaul for how the office will function, but then moving forward, we would anticipate a decrease. Is that a correct assumption?
Yes, and you have to remember the office, Shannon put that office together by bits and pieces, literally. She went through and salvaged desk and equipment from all over the city. And so she used all her resources to outfit the office. But there's certain things that will need to really do the work efficiently and effectively. Could we go through each case and all of the paper and identify? Yes, but that takes a considerable amount of time. Could we look at every video as we've been doing? Yes, but each case comes with several hours of video. So we're looking to get tools and technology that's going to assist us in doing the work efficiently, effectively, also being able to do the other part of what we're mandated to do, which is look for patterns and trends and be able to develop policy. And in order to do that, we have to have the data in a format that can be analyzed, and the analysis can be trusted. The results can be trusted. By doing it by Excel spreadsheet is not the best way to do this, not the amount of data that we have to do.
Thank you so much.
Any further discussion?
I'd like to make a motion that we pass the budget as presented.
I second the motion.
Excuse me, can I say one more thing that I think is going to be, I think important? I think Mr. Costa and Mr. Gippen, you alluded to this. I think as we present this, the question that was brought up by Ms. Castle and I think your explanation, Ms. Fennell, is going to be paramount, that because we are now trying to structure the office a little bit differently so we can be more efficient, a lot of these things are going to be one-time costs. That's why the increase is the way it is. And I think that's something I think that we should point out when we present this, that for especially when you start talking about equipment and supplies or different office things, the one-time cost is always going to be a little bit more expensive, and those things taper off. I just think that's a good point for us to make. And I think we got a motion in a second, correct?
Yes.
Okay, any further discussion?
No, I was just going to say that that's a great idea, Chairman, and I think that even to the degree that we can be very specific, the more specificity that we can provide in terms of what are one-time costs that won't carry over into subsequent years, I think that would be a good idea to do.
Yeah. And appreciate Mr. Costa, Mr. Fennell, for your diligence on the budget. Thanks so much. I know it's always challenging and hard to get those things done, and You know, Ms. Fennell, your expertise in the field, you're bringing something not only to the office, but also to our city that is definitely needed. So I want to thank both of you for your time and your diligence in putting together the budget. All right, are we ready to vote?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, we'll roll call vote. Anaskevich,
Yes.
Gippin,
Yes?
Peoples,
Yes.
Hawkins,
Yes.
Castle,
Yes.
Costa,
Yes.
Richards,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Boyd, yes. The budget, the resolution passes. Is there anything else for the good of the order?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I just want to repeat what I think I've said several times now. I would very much like to receive the completed use of force packets of documentation and citizen and complaint documentation in the form that we were getting them originally before Mr. Fennell came on staff, so that they can be considered in review committee. And I've said it, I found it very useful to see, to review those, to see those, to understand what was going on, and potentially I or other members of the board who might want to get these would be able to ask questions about what occurred in those instances and why those were presumably not matters that the auditor had to make a recommendation on or felt the need to. I understand that access to Blue Team may not be open to us, but I don't know any reason why I and other board members should not receive what any member of the public could receive and what we were receiving before, and I would very much appreciate that, ideally in time to be able to raise any questions in the next review committee.
And so, Mr. Gibbon, we were receiving that through.
Go
ahead. I'm sorry.
They were coming to Ms. Thompson from the department. We finally got that chain going.
Yes, that is right.
Chain going, and then they were provided, and that's what I want to see. I don't want to see anything that a member of the public couldn't see, but I would like to see those.
So is Captain Miller in the room? I believe he is.
Yes, he's here.
Captain Miller, is there a process or something that we need to do in order to be able to receive that again?
Chairman,
We may
Chairman Boyd,
need to house this.
we can't have this discussion. This meeting was called for the purposes of the budget. The budget's been adopted. You're going now beyond the purpose.
Thank you, Miss Matz. Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay. If we're at the point, I apologize. I shouldn't have brought that up. My comments are, I want to thank Miss Myers and Miss Jones and some of the community members today. I thought we had a really great community engagement meeting. So thank you all for your efforts and for your work. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Have a great evening, everyone. God bless.
You too.
You too.
Thank you.